of support for the American war resistors, fully backs this whole rally and the rallies like it across the country. Why? Well, I think Gordon has touched on a lot of the issues. There is this deep connection with the attempt of the elite, corporate elite here in Canada to integrate Canada economically into the United States. The SPP represented adding security considerations to the economic considerations that were involved in NAFTA. Security considerations, of course, lead us into support for the war on terror. Where does this lead us? Well, it leads us to Afghanistan. Support for the United States NATO efforts in Afghanistan. And where is that leading? Well, if you're reading the newspapers in recent days, you can see that the war there is spreading into Pakistan. This is a very dangerous development. Pakistan is a very unstable country. Pakistan is one of the countries which possesses nuclear weapons. Pakistan is a country in which, although they have a nominally democratic form of government, in fact, government there is shared between the politically elected officials and the military. And there's no knowing when the military may take this over. They have in the past. Musharraf was a result of a military takeover. The war in Pakistan is indeed very, very dangerous. Canada, because of its ever-deepening connections with the United States, is inevitably going to get drawn into that unless you get a government which is willing to stand up and say, no, we're not going to play ball on this. And if that means dropping out of NAFTA, so be it. We don't have a government like that, as you well know. I doubt that we're likely to get one. But I think it's very important that those of us who understand how significant these issues are, how loaded with implications for the future they are, the future independence of this country, or the future of human rights, civil liberties in this country. It's important for us to get out and say, no, we don't want this, even though, as of now, I realize we're something of a minority. Well, having said that I'm really stepping on the ground that Gordon has already so adequately covered. I want to say something a little bit different. I'm an American expat. I've been in Canada, living in Canada now for 20 years, and I've been a citizen for, must be 6 or 7 years now. And I'm very proud of that. And I'm very proud to have not entirely cut my ties with the United States, but certainly loosened them a great deal. Now, during the Vietnam War, I was a young assistant professor at UCLA. And I remember how young Americans were fleeing to Canada to avoid serving in the war. I remember how deserters were fleeing to Canada to avoid having to go back to Vietnam. I remember that very well. And I remember how inspiring it was to us who were opposing that war that our nearest neighbor, and perhaps the country on earth closest to us in what we thought of as our American values, was standing up and saying, you know, no, we're not going to treat these people as criminals. We're not going to treat these people as avoiding their responsibilities to defend freedom. We're going to give these people a haven. That was very important, very, very important in those days of the anti-Vietnam War protest. Well, we don't have anywhere near as much protest in the States today over the Iraq War But there are a lot of people down there who are protesting it and who hate it, and who hate the Bush regime, hate what's become of America. And when Canada stood up and said, no, we're not going to Iraq, that made them very happy. That inspired their efforts. But now, I'm afraid when Canada says, no, we're standing up against a war which, all the international legal experts agree was illegal. Even our own former Prime Minister thought it was. A war which was premised on shock and awe. What is shock and awe, my friends? Shock and awe has another name. It's called terrorism. The Defense Secretary boasted about how the Americans were going to exercise shock and awe on Iraq. What was your reaction when you saw the Twin Towers fall on September the 11th, 2001? Well, I know my reaction was shock and awe. And that's what led me to agree. This is simply an act of terrorism. Well, the United States government, under its neocon leaders, decided that it's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Terrorism for terrorism. Shock and awe. And now, some of those young men were deceived into fighting that war on the premise that it was a war against terrorism and against terrorists, have come to realize that it was a war by terrorists with terrorists.
Yeah.
And that's what they want to stay in Canada. That's why they have come to Canada and hope that Canada will give them a refuge. I was very impressed with the young man who's going to have to go back to the States on the 23rd, when he said, well, if it comes to that, I'd rather go to jail back there than be out killing Iraqis.
Yeah.
He's not going to be a terrorist, even if it means going to jail. He deserves our support, and let's give it to him, and let's tell the Harper government they should be giving it to him. Thank you.